One of my favourite jobs come February, March and April and even into May is sowing seeds. But sometimes, your seeds don't always germinate and things can go wrong. So let's have a look at some of the things that we need to be mindful of when we're sowing seeds. And the most obvious thing when you get a packet is to read the instructions on the back, because they really be very useful. They'll tell you about sowing months, when to plant out and when to harvest, depth, temperature and so on. And one of the mistakes you can make, say growing peppers or tomatoes, is that you sow too early. For example, this one, Marmande tomatoes, it says you can sow in January. Well, if you sow in January, you've got to make sure that you can give your plants plenty of light, plenty of warmth. Because the seeds won't develop very well if they don't have light and they don't have heat. So as a general principle, it might be to start them later, say March, maybe even into April. The danger is if you don't give your seeds enough light, they can end up really straggly and spindly like that. With these tomato plants, it's not the end of the world, because they've got long stems which you can plant deeply into a pot and they'll go on famously. But generally, if you can't give your seeds light and heat, make sure that you plant them a little bit later when you can ensure that you can. And also when you're potting on, if you sow them too early, you've got to ensure that you've still got warmth for later on when they're emerging as young plants. The other thing that can go wrong is that you can plant too deeply with some seeds. So for example, if I was sowing these tomatoes today, I'd probably just about ½ an inch at the most, maybe even less. If you plant them too deep, sometimes they can struggle to reach the top. Water your seedlings in, but then after that you need to be careful of not making it too damp for them. So when they start to emerge, and these are some little spinach seedlings, you can water gently at the base, and for finer seedlings you can actually give them a spray, so you don't actually drench them and make them too damp. In that way you should do well. The other thing is, are you going to sow your seeds inside or out? Again, some seeds you can sow directly into the soil. For example, you can sow runner beans directly into the soil. However, personally, I like to start them off indoors first of all. And for things like runner beans, you can buy these root trainers, which are very deep trays and very deep cells, and you can plant them in like so, and start them off indoors, and then plant them out when all frost has gone. And it means that you can manage them a little bit better and keep control of them, so that maybe slugs and other pests don't get hold of them before they've established themselves. The other thing you can do with some of the larger seeds, peas for example and sweet corn, is to soak them first for about 12 hours just to loosen the outer shell. And then again, once they're ready, you can pop them in, and then you can start sweet corn and peas, beans and so on in cell trays first. When I grow broad beans, I tend to use these cells. They're not quite as deep, and you can put broad beans in those, but these cell trays are really good for starting off broad beans. So my recommendation would be very often to start things off in trays first of all. So plant at the right depth, give them the right amount of heat, decide whether you're putting them indoors or outdoors, and then water modestly, but don't drench them, especially in the early days.